This is Bob, and he's got a huge problem. Bob runs the herd, and right now, Bob owes the other bulls more hay than exists on the entire pasture. But here's the thing. Those bulls, they owe Bob just as much, and they owe each other. Everyone's pretending the hay is still coming. Bob's looking at the ledger. The numbers don't add up. They haven't for years, and the grazing fees are coming due. This is what happens when the entire herd runs out of hay to pay back what they borrowed. Global debt. Hundreds of trillions in IOUs. A number so large it stops making sense. This is how the world's biggest Ponzi scheme keeps running, and why it can't stop. Think of it like this. Bob's pasture used to work pretty simple. You grew hay, you traded hay, you saved hay for winter. If you needed extra hay before harvest, you borrowed some from another bull. Come harvest time, you paid it back, with a little extra for the trouble. Grazing fees, interest. Made sense. But then someone realized, why grow hay when you can just promise hay? Bob borrows 1,000 bales from Carl. Carl borrows 1,000 from Susan. Susan borrows from Bob. Nobody actually has the hay, but everyone has IOUs saying they'll get it eventually. And those IOUs? You can trade those too, like they're real hay. So the herd starts treating promises like product. The whole pasture runs on IOUs now. And here's the beautiful part. As long as everyone keeps borrowing, everyone keeps getting paid. It's a perpetual motion machine, powered by confidence and creative accounting, until someone asks for their actual hay back. Bob's looking at the latest numbers. The herd owes itself more than 3 times what the entire pasture produces in a year, and the grazing fees alone cost more than most bulls make. Here's how it's supposed to work. Legitimately. Governments. Your prize bulls running different pastures. They borrow hay to build fences, dig wells, keep the herd fed during droughts. Smart borrowing. Investments that help everyone graze better tomorrow. And for decades, it actually worked. After the Great Stampede of 2008, when the whole pasture nearly collapsed, the head bulls did something clever. They dropped grazing fees to basically zero. Borrowed hay became cheaper than free hay. Why? To restart the herd. Get bulls buying, building, hiring again. Emergency measure. Temporary fix. Except they never turned it off. Grazing fees stayed low for 15 years. Every bull got used to cheap hay on credit. Governments borrowed for everything. Corporations borrowed to buy back their own value. Regular working cows borrowed just to keep grazing. The idea was simple. Borrow now, grow the pasture, pay it back later when times are better. Growth would solve everything. And for a while, everyone pretended it was working. Stock markets hit record highs. The prize bulls got richer. Infrastructure got built. Jobs got created. But the debt? The debt kept growing. Faster than the pasture, faster than the hay, faster than anyone's ability to pay it back. And then the grazing fees started going up. Here's where it gets worse. The herd owes itself a staggering amount, more than triple what the entire global pasture produces in value every year. And it's growing. Not because of disasters or wars, just because the system requires constant borrowing to function. Every day, billions more in fresh IOUs, just to keep the machine running. Now here's where it gets interesting. The prize bulls, your banks, your hedge funds, your sovereign wealth cows, they hold most of these IOUs. They collect the grazing fees. When governments borrow 1 trillion bales, somebody's lending it and charging interest. The more debt, the more fees. The biggest bulls on Wall Street, Meadow, made record profits in 2023. Not from building anything, from financing everything. But wait, it gets better. Countries borrow to pay interest on old debt. Japan borrows new hay to pay grazing fees on hay borrowed 20 years ago. The U.S. adds massive amounts in new IOUs every 100 days just to service existing obligations. It's not investment anymore, it's maintenance. Borrowing to pay for borrowing. A Ponzi scheme with flags and national anthems. And here's the kicker. They can't stop. If any major pasture stopped borrowing, the whole system seizes. Markets crash. Pensions evaporate. The grazing grounds freeze. So they borrow more, which means more debt, which means higher grazing fees, which means they need to borrow even more to pay those fees. It's a stampede in slow motion, running faster just to stay in place. This isn't just one pasture's problem. It's everyone's. China's local governments owe trillions. Europe's drowning in sovereign debt. Developing pastures spend more on grazing fees than on feeding their own calves. When one major bull stumbles, the IOUs they hold become worthless, which means the bulls holding those IOUs are in trouble. Dominoes, all the way across the grazing grounds. We've seen this before. Weimar Germany, the Latin American debt crisis, Greece in 2010. Every time, same pattern. Unsustainable borrowing, rising grazing fees, a moment where the numbers stop making sense. And then, stampede. But this time, it's not one pasture. It's all of them, at once. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The math doesn't work. You cannot owe more than you'll ever produce and call it sustainable. You cannot borrow your way out of a borrowing problem. Something has to give. Either the debt gets paid, impossible, or it doesn't collapse. Or they print new hay to cover old promises. Inflation. There is no fourth option, just different flavors of stampede. So what does this mean for you? For the working cows actually grazing every day? When governments spend half their hay income on grazing fees, that's less for schools, less for hospitals, less for fixing the fences. Your infrastructure crumbles while the debt payments get priority. Always. When interest rates rise to control inflation, your mortgage becomes unaffordable. Your business loan gets called. Your job? Well, companies borrowed cheap hay for years. Now that hay's expensive, so they cut costs. That means you. Pensions? Tied to investments. Investments? Backed by debt. If that debt wobbles, your retirement wobbles. You spent 40 years grazing, and the hay you were promised might not exist when you need it. And here's the cruel joke. Inflation or austerity. Print new hay and your savings become worthless. Don't print it and the system collapses. Either way, you pay. The prize bulls holding the IOUs get bailed out. They always do. You get fiscal responsibility and necessary sacrifices. The head bulls running the pasture, the central bank cows, the investment herd, they'll tell you it's manageable, sustainable, under control. And Bob? Bob's doing just fine, thanks for asking. He hedged his position years ago. So here we are. The herd owes itself more hay than exists. The grazing fees are climbing, and the only solution anyone's offering is to borrow more hay to pay for the hay we already borrowed. You'd think someone would ask the obvious question, what happens when this stops working? But that's not how it works on the pasture. As long as everyone keeps pretending the IOUs are real, they are real. Confidence is the product. Belief is the currency. And the moment enough bulls stop believing, that's when the stampede starts. Maybe it holds another year, maybe 10. Maybe it's already too late and we're just watching the slow-motion collapse in real time, one fiscal quarter at a time. The real question isn't if this matters, it's how long this can last. Something to think about.